going to multiple cities in a very short amount of time to film some of the best baseball players in the country. I'm a director for Athletic Content House, and for this project, we were hired by the MLB Players Association. The scope of this entire project was that the MLB Players Association wanted video and photo to announce the award winners for the Players Awards in the MLB. That's where I come in, going to all the different cities, wherever these players are, whether it's them having a game there, the season being over, so we'll go to wherever they are, making it happen however we have to do it. Now, first stop, Atlanta. I just figured out that I was coming to Atlanta last night at like 8 o'clock at night, and it is currently 10:45. We're going over to the Braves Stadium pretty soon to interview a few of the players. Once we're done with that, then we're headed straight to the airport and off to Baltimore, then to Phoenix, and back to Chicago. We're here, we're at the Braves Stadium, and we have a shot set up. We got the Canon EOS R as the main camera. I'll explain why. With a 35mm 1.4 and the ND filter, shotgun mic just to pick up a little bit, and then is the actually main camera, but technically the B cam. We have a Canon R5 with a shotgun microphone on it, 24-70. This will be more handheld. And the reason that we're using the R5 as the B camera is because we need to be more mobile with it. And so that means taking some photos on it. That means getting some B-roll on it. So I need the higher quality camera as the B cam so that we can be more versatile. We ended up having to pivot from that scene in the seats to go to a family room to interview Ronald Acuña. This is where we really learned that we're gonna need a light from the ground up. We turned all the lights off in that room, and I used my main Aperture 60D with my light bar and my little Aperture key light, and we just made the best of it. This is the scene that we ended up getting, and this one, which is one of the most important interviews that we were doing, really taught us that it's gonna be a run and gun. You gotta be ready for the players. They don't have that much time, and we're gonna have to really capitalize on that 10 minutes that we have them for.
Thank you.
Grab the microphone, we're good.
Lo mejor de suerte, tenemos micrófono.
Growing up in elementary school, middle school, high school, baseball was my number one thing. I would spend my winters working out to then play in the spring for my high school team, and then a summer team and fall team. Fall baseball in Pittsburgh was pretty brutal because it would end up snowing by the end of the season, and then that over and over and over again. Kind of coming to terms towards the end of high school that I was not going to go to college to play baseball. I had to pick between a big school or playing baseball, so I picked a big school. And around the time of coming to terms that I wasn't going to play baseball in college and my career was pretty much going to be over, my team got to the regional championship. And in kind of a film movie-esque ending, I had a walk-off base hit to win it. And then up until this point, I really never shot baseball. I was never involved in baseball in a creative way. But that's the charm of this project. Interviewing the best players in the MLB and making it look pretty with my camera. What else could I ask for? This is typically what we're working with. This is the office right in front of Camden Yards in Baltimore, waiting to see when I can get my credential. We're thinking it's going to be around 1:30. It's 12:30 now. We're trying to get in a little bit early so we can get set up, be ready for the player, but you really never know. Something I just bought recently was the Insta360 X3, and this thing is not very durable. It literally fell out of my camera bag from probably about 6 inches up, and look what happened. In Baltimore, we were there to interview Gunnar Henderson. For the Gunnar Henderson one, as soon as we got in the stadium, they told us that we were going to have to be outside. Okay, doesn't matter. We'll be able to make that work, but there are different elements that come into play whenever you are outside. We decided that we still wanted to use that seat style shot that I showed earlier. And since it was a sunny day, we decided to go underneath the overhang of the stadium. So up in the stands, and we would be in the shade the whole time. Usually when you're outside, there's two elements that really get tough. Audio, which is the music playing in the actual stadium, and lighting. We eliminated the lighting one because we could be in the shade. So we didn't have to worry about that really messing up our shot. And then once we got a good scene and felt really good about everything, we wanted to make make sure that we got a behind the scenes look. A big part of this project was showing the players not just in a very polished interview format. We also wanted to show them having some fun and show some behind the scenes. So right here, we knew Gunnar Henderson was going to come from the dugout up through the stands and then come up to us to get mic'd up and do the interview. So to actually prepare for that, we have the A cam rolling pretty much at all times, so then we could see him walk into frame whenever he does, and then I'm sitting there with the B cam ready to go whenever he starts walking up to get him in slow-mo walking up, maybe a good smile. That's always a plus. Once he gets up to where we're set up in the interview setup, I would hand my camera over to the MLBPA rep, and then I would mic the player up. This is a great way to show that behind the scenes feel. Once he's done with that, head right over to where we want to do the interview. And then since we have it marked off and everything, we start the interview. As soon as we got to the Diamondback Stadium, they put us in a conference room of some sorts, which is not always ideal, but you got to make the best of what you got. So guess what we did? We turned all of the lights off once again and light from the ground up. Very simple lighting setup here. We got the Aperture 60D as our main light, and then we splashed some color on the back walls. To get the behind the scenes type feel for this one, we made sure that we mic'd him up in the hallway. So if we're in the tunnel of the Diamondback Stadium, that's going to look a lot better than a conference room. We have some branding on the walls, and even just having a Diamondbacks logo in the background is going to be better than a white wall. For this project, the interviews were the #1 priority, but something that they wanted to make happen as well was get some photos. For the photos, they wanted the Hollywood kind of aesthetic. With that being said, they were going to be in high contrast black and white. I did not change the lighting setup at all from the interview because we only had like 10 minutes with each of these players. So after the interviews, in this specific time, it was Corbin Carroll. I just told him, hey, look right here for one photo. We would get a nice portrait of them looking at camera. Then I would ask whoever was doing the interview to just spark up some conversation because we wanted to get details on the player. Some of the best details were on Ronald Acuña. He had a number 13 tattooed on his neck. He had a bunch of chains that I asked him to pull out. And then you get the eyeball as well. Getting a tight portrait of the player's eye ended up being this recurring theme that we would use. So making these interview scenes that are supposed to actually have some feel for where you are turn into a studio of some sort was not that easy, but using cropping in your camera and really just spraying whenever you have the 1-2 minutes to get all the portraits, you got to make the best of it. And a little trick. So right here, you see this side of my face is dark. This side of my face is light. This is how we looked at the different lighting setups for video. So we wanted a little bit of negative fill on the left side of the face, and we wanted a bright side of the face. For the B cam and for the portraits, I would always try and film on the darker side of the face. So if you have the darker side closer to the camera, it always looks a little bit more cinematic. So you see these Corbin Carroll photos. This one, not that cinematic, but you go over here and all of a sudden it really feels like you're in a studio because you have the light behind the subject. I'm back in Chicago, which is where I'm currently based, but the shoot's not over. I'm headed down to the White Sox Stadium, leaving in about 20 minutes, and we are filming with Blake Snell of the Padres. Now, since we are filming an away player at a different stadium, this is something that we have to be weary about and try not to show the opposing team's logos in the background. I believe how we're differentiating this one is we're going to do it in the dugout during the White Sox BP. So in the dugout will be different than what we have already gotten, but I think it will be nice because now we have 2 indoor and 2 outdoor. The biggest thing is that the framing stays consistent throughout them all. Filming in the dugout of the White Sox Stadium really raised 2 kinds of problems. One, we were filming with Blake Snell. He's a pitcher for the Padres. So something that we wanted to keep in the front of our mind whenever we were setting up the interview was to have no White Sox branding in the background. We accomplished that really not that hard to do with some nice lenses and just being aware of your surroundings. The other thing was that we were out on the field, and the time that we had slotted to interview him was around the time of batting practice. So 5 minutes before we did the interview, they turned on music throughout the entire stadium. We had to make the best of it. I ended up turning the audio levels down very low on the microphones because I only wanted it to focus on his voice and not the music. In post, we can raise that up a little bit, but we want to isolate his voice the best that we can, and that ended up working out perfectly.
Yeah, congrats, Ronald, on winning Player of the Year. Keep going. Yeah, congrats, Ronald, on winning Player of the Year. Keep going.
The next interview we were doing was Shohei Ohtani. We were flying out to Newport Beach for this one, and this was going to be at a house. So very much different elements than we had for the other ones, which is a good thing. As long as we had him framed up in a similar way, have the B cam looking very similar, it's actually good to have the variety. If they were all in the same spot, it would be this weird match cut that I personally don't like because there's not enough changing in the match cut. We're still going to have the match cut since the framing is the same for all of the players, but not too perfect, which is a good thing. So I flew to Newport Beach the night before, and the morning of, I realized that I forgot an essential piece of my lighting kit. So thank God I was in LA for this because I was in the film capital of the world and there was a camera store right down the street. I got a soft box. That's all I needed. It was one of those quick release ones, which I realized I was long overdue for, but I was very nervous. Just make sure you double check your kit before you leave, especially for a big shoot, like with a player like Shohei Ohtani. I don't know what I was doing. So we got to the house that we were interviewing him at and we set up immediately. One of the things that we were doing was marking spots on the ground, which were the closest that I could go whenever I was operating the B cam, just so that I didn't get into the corner of the shot. An easy little trick that you can do just so you can move around. The B cam was not meant to be static, locked off for this. We wanted to get a variety, so it looked like there were 15 different shots going. So I'd be like leaning on the couch like this, or I'd be on the stairs and I'd be shooting through the railing. Once the interview was done, I mentioned we were doing portraits of all the different players. Something else that we were doing was trying to get a little bit of B-roll. The interviews were all meant to be real time, so I obviously wasn't shooting in 120 frames per second. But once we were done with the interview and we wanted some B-roll, I would switch the camera over to 4K 120 and we brought a baseball with us. So I'd get different shots like the player throwing it up in their hand or them holding it out to the camera. Little moments like that so that it would be a great intro for the first time we see the player on camera. A simple thing that you can do for any shot that I use for construction gigs in the most simple sense is that you just have somebody start looking down and then look up. You shoot that in slow-mo, it's going to look really cinematic, and so we got that with all the different players, and we could match cut if we wanted, but they ended up working out very good for intros and outros whenever we were seeing them for the first time and seeing them for the last time in the videos. Now, the last interview was Cody Bellinger, and this was in Phoenix. We ended up doing it in the MLB Players Association office, which was a really cool place. They had a batting cage in the office. Is that a dream office or what? To not make it feel too corporate, we actually did the interview in the batting cage and we rearranged it a little bit so you would see the L screen on one side, you would see some buckets, some baseballs on the other side. And with this being the final interview, it's one that I felt really good about, and it really was a nice B-cam shot as well. So that's it. One of my favorite projects that I've worked on to date. I can confidently say that. If you want to see the different videos, I'll link them below as best as I can, and they're also on the MLB Players Association Twitter and Instagram. So go over, check those out. If it's anything about the awards with some neon branding, those are the videos that I shot, and the team over at Athletic Content House curated, edited, did all the back end work. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're not already. I hope this video helped you in some kind of way. And as always, here's some of my favorite photos from the past week. Peace.